right, we're going to go ahead and get this show on the road. Coach Osborne will be walking in the room here in just a moment. He's finishing up his brief interview on 103.7 The Buzz. Welcome to, what are we, number 4, Reps? This is 4th meeting. It feels like it's the 8th week of the year already. We've had such big meetings. We're going to have a great meeting today with Coach Osborne, and we'll kick it off as always. Gary Underwood, would you lead us in a word of prayer?
Sure will. I don't have anything funny to say after Saturday, so let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the day and the opportunity to gather together, enjoy each other's company. Thank you for the food and use it to strengthen our bodies as we serve you. And use us today in your service. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thanks, Gary. Did everybody enjoy Dan Hampton last week? Was he not outstanding? Wow. I think some people were actually a little surprised. I don't know what they were expecting, but he's a very gregarious, fun-loving kind of guy. And he was really honored that the award was going to be named after him, so I was glad to have him here. Next week we will have Jeff Long. We're getting Jeff in a little earlier this year in the season. Don't know why that would be the case, but I'm glad the athletic director feels it's important enough to come down to the Little Rock Touchdown Club every year, and I hope we have a big crowd for him. The week after that, does anybody know who that is? Houston Nutt. Will we have a crowd as big or bigger than this? I think so. Will Rex be on good behavior? Best behavior. We want to remind everybody to keep RSVPing on the website, lrtouchdown.com. You've been doing a great job. Right now, if you want to, before you turn off your phones, if you want to text your friends that aren't here to say, hey, you can watch this live at lrtouchdown.com, you can do that. We stream it live. And then every meeting that's done here is posted on the website, our website. So you want to go back and watch that great Cowboy meeting or Hampton or Coach Bielema, it's all on the website. So you want to thank all the folks over at Flex 360 for helping us do that to our website. Also, too, let's give them a round of applause for making our website even better. Now, I think we're right at either 400 or over 400 in memberships. I encourage you, if you haven't joined, please join. It's not very expensive, and it costs money to bring in speakers every week and expenses and to do ballroom stuff. And so whether you join for the $50 deal or come back and join the National Football Foundation, vote in the College Football Hall of Fame. We got a deal for only $25 extra. So if you've already joined the 50, tell Kelly or one of the girls up front that, hey, I want to pay $25 extra because we are the host chapter of the National Football Foundation in Arkansas. So I want us to represent the state well. Also, the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame, you can combine all three, Touchdown Club, National Football Foundation, and the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame for only $125. So I do want to thank those of you who have already done that and hope you'll continue. I do want to thank our sponsors real quick, Twin City Limousine, Dale Bennett, Popeye, and all you guys for being available to pick up our guests if they so choose. 103.7 The Buzz. It's really a pleasure. Not only is Coach out there, we have a live broadcast every Monday, but the owner of the station is here. And let's give a round of applause to Philip Johnson, the owner of Signal Media and 103.7 The Buzz. Great to have him. And his wife Diane is here. And just so happens his wife was a sorority sister of Coach Osborne's wife. Let's welcome Diane Johnson. How about that? Small world. I have noticed there is some non-Razorback red here. What color do you call that? What is that? Is it crimson? Scarlet. Okay, I noticed there's some great Nebraska representation. I know Coach Osborne will be excited to see that. I do want to thank Little Rock Commission Visitor Bureau for sponsoring the club. Proud to be here in Little Rock. Metters Adams Lee Insurance for all your insurance need. Thank you, AB Metters. Epic Health, Mike Whitfield, I think, where's Mike at? Go by and get yourself screened, guys. If you're not feeling like you need to or you want to get back to feeling like you used to do, go by. They're right around the corner, right behind Chili's. They'll take good care of you. Thank you, Epic Health, for sponsoring the Touchdown Club this year, guys. Appreciate that. Wendy's, sponsoring the Dan Hampton and Willie Rofe Awards. Thank you, Wendy's. Go out and get a grilled chicken sandwich today on the club, would you? You got to pay for it, but just think of the club when you do. Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings Law Firm. Cindy Henry, where's Cindy at? Cindy, thank you so much. She's in charge of their sports law division. They are sponsoring the Cliff Harris Award. And not only that, we mentioned that they're a law firm now that represents athletes and coaches, and they also are a great law firm. It's been around 113 years. So if you want a great law firm, go to Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings and tell them you heard about it through the Touchdown Club. And I told Rex, what is it? Did I say something wrong? Okay. We got to. Oh yeah. Kevin's over there fighting for clients. I see you, Kevin Crass over there. Sorry, Kevin. They're the sponsor. But we are really glad, and I was telling Rex, we're going to have to crank up the Cliff Harris Award coming up very soon. Hey, let's welcome Tom Osborne here. Just give me a quick word. Coach, you can take any seat that you want. Do want to thank Crane Automotive. Drew, thank you so much. I don't think Larry's here today. They employed over 500 Arkansans here. Go by and ask for the Touchdown Club sale of the day and get your special on some kind of car or vehicle. They also own radio stations, and we appreciate the Crane support of the Touchdown Club here. Also, do want to thank the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. I'm not sure if Wally's here, but he's in the back somewhere. Tabitha Cunningham, thanks so much for their support. Next week, we start honoring our high school player of the week. So we appreciate them. Today, Lunsford Bridges is not here, and Susie is not here either. So John Monroe is here representing Metropolitan National Bank. John is the Monroe family is like the Carleone family of the Little Rock Touchdown Club. You got Ark and Nancy on the board. You got Johnson up here at the head table. Whatever you say, I'll do whatever you say. But thank you for Metropolitan Bank being a tremendous sponsor now for 9 years. Let's give all of our sponsors a big round of applause. Thanks to Wayne and Casey and Beth, all the folks here at Embassy Suites. Dwayne Duncan, who's worked every event this weekend at War Memorial, you name it. Dwayne does a great job for the Touchdown Club. Thank you. Matt Johnson doing our live stream in the back. Kelly Lassane working real hard as always. He had the Paul Lills tournament on Friday. Did a great job there. Our check-in girls, I do want to let you know, just to verify that this is a done deal, Dee Dee Helbig, where's she at? Dee Dee is the owner of Ava Bella, and she's the one that's going to be taking care of our team of 10 girls at her spa. So let's give her a round of applause. Dee Dee Helbig, Ava Bella Spa. And guys, you can go by and get your massage too, but we're not paying for it. I'm sorry. It's all on you. I do also want to recognize a couple other special guests. Clay Henry, who is the longtime journalist, son of Orville Henry, and a guy who covered Coach Osborne in Tulsa. He came all the way down from Northwest Arkansas. I worked with him in helping get the Touchdown Club up in Northwest Arkansas started. He's close friends with Senator John Bozeman, who I understand, Coach Osborne, you're good friends with, and apparently some kind of fishing trip may be lined up here. Where are you at, Clay? Stand, let's give you a round of applause. Where are you? Go right in the front, Clay Henry. And last but not least, Coach, I was surprised to see this gentleman here, but I think you're going to recognize him. He is a former Oklahoma Sooner, now on the broadcast team of the Arkansas Razorback broadcast, and a guy who said he's 4-0 against you. Ladies and gentlemen, Keith Jackson. Where are you at, Keith? There he is back there. He said he has so much respect for you, Coach, he wouldn't miss today. I said, well, what was your record? He said, oh, it's 4-0 against Coach, that's all. Had a big weekend in football. It was great to have football back in full force. And just mentioning and giving acknowledgments. You know, we mentioned all the folks doing a good job out here. You know, Rex doesn't give enough, we don't give him enough attention and praise for the hard work he does every time on these weekend recaps. So let's give it up for Rex Nelson. Rex Nelson, everybody.
Thanks, David, and thank you, everybody. What a weekend. 31-21 at War Memorial Stadium over Stanford. We beat Stanford.
No.
Oh, Sanford. I'm sorry, David. Oh, well, Sanford. You know what one of our former coaches used to say? All wins are precious. So that was a precious win. Or as another former Razorback head coach used to say, smile. So let's see some smiles, okay? Hey, look at it this way. Look at it this way. There are a lot of us in this room old enough to have grown up in the Southwest Conference era, and I got to tell you, Dr. Osborne, any week that Texas loses is a good week in college football. How many of you used to have one of those bumper stickers that said, no fruit sucks like a big orange of Texas? There we go. Hey, there were some highlights. 200-yard rushers in each of the first two games. As you saw, for the first time in school history, Alex Collins becomes the first Arkansas freshman to top 100 yards rushing in his first two games. And, you know, they had the Lambeau leap. Now we got the War Memorial leap, right? Maybe not again from the quotes I saw, but we got it once. Zach Hocker, 53-yard field goal. That's the longest for any Razorback since Kendall Trainor's 58-yarder against Miami in 1988. Been a while. 333 rushing yards. That's good. That tops 300 for the first time since 2010. And so the Razorbacks are now 167, 67 and 4 all time in Little Rock, 149, 54 and 2 all time in Little Rock. Not bad for a road game, is it? Not bad at all. There was a Liberty Bowl representative at the game, saw him in the press box Saturday night. If Arkansas can at least get to 6-6, he said he would promise an invitation to the Liberty Bowl and a high of 27 degrees on New Year's Eve in Memphis. So that's something you can be looking forward to come December. And you know it's going to be a bad day when you're penalized on the first play for wearing the wrong colored jersey. That's what happened to ASU and Auburn on Saturday night. That anthracite is nothing but trouble, is it? We could have told them that after last year. ASU had just 150 rushing yards, 38-9 Auburn. Gus Malzahn now 2-0 as an SEC head coach. UCA was leading Colorado going into the fourth quarter before the Buffaloes scored the final 21 points to win 38-24. UCA will go to Tennessee Martin this Saturday. ASU, meanwhile, opens conference play in Jonesboro on Thursday night. Big game against Troy. You can see that one on ESPNU if you don't go up. 6:30 p.m. kickoff. UAPB falls to 0-2. 58-14 to McNeese State down in Lake Charles. Golden Lions have now given up 120 points in just 8 quarters of football. McNeese outgained the Golden Lions 528 to 216. Now 5 of the state's 6 Great American Conference teams began the season last week. Southern Arkansas and Harding had both been picked highly coming into the season. Harding was 9-2 last year, SAU 8-3. Both upset in Oklahoma though on Thursday night. Harding fell to Southwestern Oklahoma by 4 points. Southern Arkansas fell to Southeastern Oklahoma, got to get all the directions right, by 6 points, 56-50. But the Raymond Monica era at Arkansas Tech began with a 38-10 win over Northwestern Oklahoma. That's their new coach who came from Kutztown up in Pennsylvania when Steve Mullins resigned after 16 years as head coach. On Saturday night, meanwhile, UAM lost for the 11th consecutive time, falling to one of those directional schools from Oklahoma. But Henderson, did you check this score out? Which went 10-0 last year in the regular season, beat Southern Nazarene from the Oklahoma City area 82-10. That's the most points a Henderson team has scored since it scored 99 against Arkansas College, now Line College, way back in 1932. Jim was at that game. He's got the program. He'll show you a little bit later. Ready quarterback Kevin Rogers, one of the best in the nation in D2, passed for 468 yards and 6 touchdowns in just more than a half. And Jim, seriously, and I know there are other Hendricks grads out there, how about Hendricks remaining undefeated since 1960? 46-44 over Westminster as Steve Crenshaw kicks a 25-yard field goal with 1 second left. They have a very good, I went over there, great atmosphere, have a very good freshman quarterback in Seth Peters, who threw for 2,987 yards last year as a high school senior at Greenbrier. So congratulations to Coach Buck Buchanan and everybody who got that program off the ground. And while we're at it, let's not forget we do have a junior college program here in town. Arkansas Baptist goes to 2-1 Saturday afternoon out at Quigley Cox with a 44-3 win over Independence Community College. Now, in honor of Dr. Osborne, we'll tell you Nebraska went to 2-0 with a 56-13 win over Southern Mississippi, and that's just who Arkansas gets to play this week. The team with the longest losing streak in the country at 14 games, the Golden Eagles of Southern Miss. Now, when I asked last week, let's be honest, how many of you picked Georgia over South Carolina? I know there were some out there. You hit it, big day for the Bulldogs. Aaron Murray, 309 yards, 4 touchdowns passing in that 11-point win over South Carolina between the hedges. Meanwhile, I have got breaking news on the linguistic front. Since we have a Dr. Osborne up here, we're going to get a little more highbrow than usual and go on the linguistic front. I'm told that editors at Webster's Dictionary have confirmed that Coach Bobby Petrino invented 8 new curse words on Saturday as Western Kentucky lost 52-20 to Tennessee in Knoxville. 5 turnovers in 6 offensive plays. Western goes from a 3-0 lead to a 31-3 defeat. Their quarterback becomes the first Western quarterback to throw 5 interceptions since 1977. In case you're wondering, the record for consecutive turnovers is 7 consecutive possessions. That was set by Florida State against Florida in 1972. And speaking of Florida, is Miami back after its 21-16 win over the Gators? The Hurricanes had lost 12 of the previous 14 games against teams ranked number 12 or higher, but a big win over Florida. And then elsewhere in the SEC, it was the SEC against lesser opponents. Texas A&M's 2-0, winning 65-28 over Sam Houston State. Final stats for Johnny Manziel: 19 post-game autographs for $892. So we'll be updating that every week. LSU is 2-0 after a 56-17 win over UAB. Ole Miss is 2-0, 31-13 over SEMO. Vanderbilt 1-1, 38-3 over Austin Peay. They still have the best year in college football, though, don't they? Let's all do it. Let's go, Peay. All right, Kentucky is 1-1. 41-7 over Miami of Ohio. Missouri is 2-0, 38-23 over Toledo, and Mississippi State is 1-1, 51-7 over Alcorn State. This week, Alabama at Texas A&M. Any of you like the Aggies to win at home? Let's see your hands.
Wow!
There's a few.
Holy cow!
There's a few. We'll remember that if they do. Mississippi State at Auburn. How many of you think Gus Malzahn goes to 3-0 with an Auburn win? That would be a good start for him. Louisville at Kentucky, Kent State at LSU, Ole Miss at Texas, who fired its defensive coordinator yesterday. Anybody like the Rebels to go in there and beat Texas in Austin? Wow. Look at that. Interesting. Vanderbilt at South Carolina. How many of you like Vanderbilt to go to Columbia? There we go. There's a few. And give South Carolina its 2nd consecutive loss. Tennessee at Oregon. I'm not going to ask if anybody thinks Tennessee's going to win at Oregon. And Southern Mississippi, of course, at Arkansas on Saturday morning in Fayetteville. Also around the state, we got Alabama State at UAPB, Southeastern Oklahoma at UAM, Southwestern Oklahoma at Arkansas Tech, Northwestern Oklahoma at Harding, McKendree at Henderson, almost everybody's home, East Central at Southern Arkansas, so there are games everywhere this week. I want to go off script just 1 second, David, and I know that's always dangerous, as you say, Jim, but those who know me know I have a political background, having worked in Governor Huckabee's office for 10 years, having worked in the Bush administration for 4 years after that. Do you know Dr. Osborne served 3 terms in the United States Congress? 2 contentious issues, Gary, that you'll well remember we worked on in the governor's office, Dr. Osborne, were school reform, school consolidation issues, and also Governor Huckabee got beat up by his own party when he took a stand for the children of immigrants getting in-state tuition rates. Dr. Osborne ran for governor of Nebraska in 2006, and he did something very rare in this day and time, and it cost him the election. He took a principled stand on an education issue and on an immigration issue against an opponent who was demagoguing those issues. And sir, I just want to say, with all this sports talk today, you are a political hero in addition to being a sports hero. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks, Rex. Appreciate that. Good job. A couple things real quickly. Judy, I apologize. You know, I must have dated one time a Cindy Hendry, and I tried to keep it out of my mind, and somehow she popped back in. It's Judy Hendry, not Cindy Hendry. Obviously a bad memory that I wish I could keep out of my head. So Judy Hendry from Wright, Lindsay and Jennings. I knew, I kept looking at you like, what are you, you've known me for 20 years, David, what are you doing? I'm telling you, Rex,
almost 50, David.
I forget where I'm going sometimes. I know it's downhill after 50. I do want to thank Chris Peterson, athletic director at ULR, and his wife Tracy for picking up Coach. I didn't realize, visiting with Chris, that he actually, you were a pallbearer at Coach Devaney's funeral. And so obviously, he's worked with Coach Osborne as well. Thank you so much for picking Coach up. Now, let me just say this real quick before we introduce Coach. I I know there's some folks here that want to talk to Coach Osborne. I know there's some folks here you want some things signed. So let me just tell you, his flight's pretty tight today. So what we're going to do after the meeting's over, we'll do the 50-yard line, folks, to get their pictures. And all I ask is while we're doing that, and then afterwards, as Coach Osborne walks down the podium and leaves the ballroom, that if you want to come up and say hello and maybe share something, just be brief, so that everybody will get a chance to do it, and it won't make him late for his flight. He got up early this morning, probably about 4:30, to get here on time, which we appreciate. So just if you get a chance, if you want to come up and share a memory with him or get him to sign an autograph, just do it real quick if you can, out of courtesy to him, so we can get him back to the airport. I do want to say, Coach, thank you so much for fitting us in. You're a busy guy, and we're going to do something a little different with Coach. We're going to let him speak for a few minutes, and then I'm going to do a little interview with him up front, some Q&A between he and I, and then we're going to open up to Q&A. And so, Coach, we're going to give you the proper introduction, as no one else can do it. Please welcome Jim Rasco, everybody.
Today's speaker is a native of Hastings, Nebraska. In high school, he was the quarterback of the football team, was All-State in basketball, leading Hastings to his first state championship in 1954. In the state track meet in 1955, he won the discus throw and finished second in the 440. In baseball, he played third base for Hastings Legion team when they won the state tournament. He excelled in the classroom and was ranked in the upper 6% of his class and was president of the student body. In May of 1955, he was selected as the Athlete of the Year for the state of Nebraska. He chose to attend Hastings College in his hometown. His grandfather had played football for Hastings College at the turn of the century, and his father had played there in the 1920s. At Hastings, he was a 4-year starter in both football and basketball, and all-conference 3 years in both sports. In the conference track meet his senior year, he won the 440 and placed in the javelin throw. In his studies, he graduated in the A- range with a major in history, minors in English, and economics. In 1959, he was selected as the College Athlete of the Year for the state of Nebraska, the first Nebraskan to win this award in high school and again in college. In January, he was the first player in the history of Hastings College and the only player from the state of Nebraska drafted by an NFL team in the 1959 draft. In March, he was awarded a Rockefeller Brothers Theological Fellowship, the first Rockefeller Award to a Hastings student. Because he'd been drafted by the 49ers, he planned to study at the San Francisco Theological Seminary. He joined the 49ers in the fall of 1959 and was converted from quarterback to end. He survived until the final cut and was then placed on the reserve list, drawing a salary and participating in the daily workouts. It was more the same in 1960. Again, he survived until the 49ers' final cut, being told he wasn't heavy enough for NFL ball. But this time he was immediately signed by the Washington Redskins. He became a starting offensive end, wearing number 84 for the Redskins late in the 1960 season. In the summer of '61, he re-signed with the Redskins, and on October the 8th, he caught his first touchdown pass. Then on December the 4th, he caught the longest pass of his career, a 60-yard touchdown pass from Norm Snead against the Cardinals. The 1961 Redskins suffered 9 straight losses to open the season before going to Dallas and tying the Cowboys 28-28. Then they lost 3 more. So in the final game of the season on December the 17th, the winless Redskins hosted the Cowboys in D.C. Stadium. Our speaker caught 3 passes as the Redskins upset Dallas 34-24. After those 2 seasons with the Redskins, he decided to continue his education and to go into coaching. He started as a lowly graduate assistant at Nebraska under Coach Bob Devaney in the spring of 1962. He earned his master's degree in 1963 and continued his dual role in education and football coaching. He gained his doctorate in education psychology in 1965 and then decided to pursue coaching full-time in 1967. When Devaney announced his retirement from coaching the Cornhuskers in favor of being the full-time athletic director, he chose Dr. Tom Osborne to be his successor. For the next 25 years, Tom Osborne compiled one of the most amazing coaching records in the history of college football. I remember reading the Arkansas Democrat when Coach Osborne retired, and the newspaper listed his career records, season by season. I ran my finger down and noticed the most losses he had in any one season was 3. I want to repeat that. The most losses he had in any one season in his 25-year career was 3. How about 25 bowl games in 25 seasons? His teams finished the season ranked in the top 15 in the country 24 times. One time they fell all the way to number 24. Talk about going out on top. His last 5 teams won 60 and lost 3. I know you'd rather hear from Coach Osborne than me, but in closing, let me mention just 3 games. First in the Orange Bowl following the 1994 season. Nebraska beats Miami 24-17 to finish the season with a record of 13-0, national champions. Now let's go to the Fiesta Bowl following the 1995 season. It's the first season of the Bowl Alliance, with number 1 Nebraska facing number 2 Florida for the national championship. Final score, Nebraska 62, Florida 24. Back-to-back national championships. Now let's go to the Orange Bowl game, played January 2nd, 1998. It's the final game for Coach Tom Osborne. His Cornhuskers, who come in with a perfect record of 12-0, face Peyton Manning in his final game with the Tennessee Volunteers. The Vols come in with a record of 11-1. It's not even close. Nebraska shuts down Peyton. The Cornhuskers roll up a 35-3 lead and coast to a 42-17 victory. After this victory, Coach Osborne retired and was immediately voted in the College Football Hall of Fame. I don't have any time left to list all of his honors, but let me give you one. An online poll conducted by ESPN in 2007, Coach Tom Osborne was voted the greatest college football coach of all time. So now let's please welcome Hall of Famer Dr. Tom Osborne.
Well, thank you very much. I'd say that's a pretty complete introduction. There was stuff in there that I didn't even know, but it's very kind, and thank you very much. One thing about it, some of those polls where you're the greatest of all time, if you have your relatives vote multiple times, you have a pretty good chance of winning, and there was no restriction on the number of times you could vote. Rex, you wore me out. That is the most exhaustive sports analysis that I've ever heard. And I'm glad that David has a good memory. When you're dating as many ladies as he has, you have to have a good memory. So, but it's good to see my old friend Chris Peterson, who's done a great job down here and did a great job at Nebraska, and his wife Tracy, and so I've always appreciated that friendship. And Keith, I wouldn't have gotten up at 4 o'clock in the morning if I'd known you were going to say that you did 4-0 guesses. But it is true, unfortunately. So anyway, I know you guys are pretty bright people down here, and reminds me of this young guy who was working at a grocery store as a checkout clerk. And this one lady came in, and she was wanted a half head of lettuce. And he said, "I'm sorry, lady, we don't ever sell a half head of lettuce, we only sell a whole head of lettuce." She was rather an attractive lady, and became very irate, and was causing a real scene. People were backing up behind him, and finally he said, "Okay," he said, I'll go to the back store and I'll find the manager and I'll see what we can do." So I went to the back store and found the manager, and he said, "You know, there's this really ugly woman out in front, and she wants to buy a half head of lettuce." Then he turned and he saw that she had followed him and was standing right beside him. And he said, and you know, and this lady, this lovely lady here, would like to buy the other half. So after she had left, the manager complimented him. He said, "You know, I've never seen anybody recover that quick." He said, "How in the world did you do that?" The guy said, "Well, I've had experience." He said, "You know, I'm from Massillon, Ohio. In Massillon, Ohio, we have only two things." He said, "We have great high school football teams and really ugly women." The manager thought a minute, and he says, "You know," he said, "my wife is from Massillon, Ohio." And the guy thought a minute, and he said, "And what position did she play?" So I told that story for David in case he gets in any difficulty. Well, it was mentioned the last game that I coached was against Tennessee, and you know, it seemed like the more important the game, the more time you want to have practice, you have more press conferences, and they go on forever. And So I was at this press conference, and they had Tennessee players and coaches and Nebraska players and coaches, and found myself standing next to Philip Fulmer, the head coach at Tennessee. And pretty soon, Philip started talking about Peyton Manning, his quarterback, and he was saying how smart Peyton was, how bright he was, how intelligent he was, how innovative he was, and on and on. And apparently I wasn't looking overly impressed, and so he said, "I'll prove it to you." So he called Peyton over and he said, "Peyton, I'm going to ask you a question. Why don't you answer it?" Peyton said, "Okay." He said, "Peyton, who is your father's brother's nephew?" And Peyton thought a minute and he said, well, that's me." Philip turned to me and said, "What'd I tell you? The guy's brilliant." Well, I didn't want to be outdone. You can lose a game right at the press conference. So I said, "Our quarterback, Scott Frost, is really bright too. And I'm sure he'll get that answer very quickly." And so I called Scott over and I said, "Scott, I'm going to ask you a question. Why don't you answer it?" He said, "Okay." He said, "Scott, who is your father's brother's nephew?" And he said, "That's kind of a tough question." He said, "Give me a minute." I said, "Okay." So he kind of went off and he saw Frankie Lennon, our number 2 quarterback, over in the corner. He said, "Frankie," he said, "I need some help." He said, "Who is your father's brother's nephew?" And Frankie said, well, that's me." So he came back over and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, coach," he said, "I got it." I said, "What is it?" He said, "It's Frankie Lennon." And I said, "Scott, you knothead, it isn't Frankie Lennon, it's Peyton Manning." He said, "Get over and tell Philip Fulmer what the right answer is." And this is how surprised Philip was when he got it. So anyway, what I thought I would do, we got this thing set up, I guess, to where I'll talk for 15, 20 minutes, and then in case it's really boring, then we're going to have a structured interview, and you guys can really spice it up, except I'm not taking any questions from Keith Jackson. Well, I just thought I'd reflect a little bit on college athletics because I've been around it for a while, and actually was very, very fortunate in that when I got out of professional football, at that time they didn't take very good care of you, and had a pulled hamstring, and so they injected it with Novocaine every week, and by the end of the season there was so much scar tissue in there I couldn't run anymore. So I decided I better go ahead and go to graduate school. Went back to Nebraska. I had no idea that I'd become a coach, but I'd always been in athletics, been all the biggest part of my life, and so I thought, well, I'll kind of ease out of it, and so I asked Bob Devaney, who had just been hired, he was from Wyoming, if he could use a grad assistant. And so Bob hired me, and so I spent 11 years with Bob as an assistant coach. And Bob took a team that had been 3-6 the year before, and he went 9-2 with those same players. And then we won 4 straight Big 8 championships, and actually played for 3 national championships. One of those was against Arkansas at the end of the 1965 season. I think it was Frank Broyles' national championship team, the lowest scoring game, but Arkansas won. And we lost a couple to Alabama, and then we finally in 70-71 were able to win a couple national championships, and one of those was against Bear Bryant in Alabama. And that was really the high point of Bob's career. So he was the AD, and he was able to appoint me as the head coach. So I was very, very fortunate. It was just a lucky thing, and as I said, I didn't plan to be a coach, but I just couldn't quite get away from it. And so there have been a lot of changes that have occurred over the years, and I thought I'd just reflect very quickly with you on some of those. First of all, there's a lot of criticism today of intercollegiate athletics. And some people would have you believe that it's an absolute quagmire, and things have never been worse. But I would have to say that there are a lot of things that I think are immeasurably better. Back in the early 60s, I was appointed as the academic counselor. I was the only one. And at that time, what I had to do is just make sure people stayed eligible. you had to have a 2-point grade point average, and you had to pass 24 hours. And I was in charge of 150 football players, and I was always scared to death that somehow I was going to miss something. And so there were those horror stories where sometimes an athlete, just to stay eligible, would stay in school for 4 years, and he would be eligible, but he might only have 40 or 50 hours toward a degree. And we did better than that for the most part, but that's kind of the way it was in athletics. So a lot of changes have taken place. You have to have a certain minimum score on the SAT or the ACT, certain grade point average, certain class rank, and that has improved. But the biggest thing has been something called APR, which means that you're progressing toward a degree. And as you know, the NCAA has put some teeth in that now. So if you don't have a certain APR with a certain number of players, most of your players, on track to graduate, you're not eligible for postseason play, whether it be a bowl game or whatever it may be. That's one of David's girlfriends. I'm going to have to get off the phone here. Sorry about that. So anyway, that certainly has changed a great deal. The second thing that I think has changed a great deal that I think is noteworthy is simply the issue of training. You know, back in the 60s, offensive linemen in general, probably 240 to 220, somewhere in that range. John Boozman was a pretty good lineman, I think, for Arkansas. He's later than that. But today you have high school kids that are 280 to 300 pounds, and they're pretty good athletes. And so strength training has come in, and I think we may have been the first program that had a strength program back in about 1968, a guy named Boyd Epley. And Boyd had put out, I think, somewhere between 60 and 70 head strength coaches in professional athletics and around the country, high schools, colleges, and so on. So that has changed. And certainly one thing that has also changed was that the football season back in the 60s was primarily about 3.5 months long. You came and started practicing in the middle of August. First game was usually about the middle of September, and you were done by November if you're lucky enough to go to one of the few bowl games that they were. It might be on until January 1. But today, lots of people don't know, even those of you who are very avid football fans, you start the off-season program usually in early January, and that goes into spring ball, and then it resumes the off-season program throughout the summer, and then you start practice usually the end of July or early August, and that season now has expanded from 10 games to potentially 15 at the end of the 2014 season. So student athletes and football players in particular pay a tremendous price. They're going to school, they have what is equivalent to a full-time job, and yet they also have a second what is equivalent to a full-time job. So they are some of the most structured people that you'll ever find. There isn't a whole lot of wiggle room, and they're under all kinds of rules, regulations, and scrutiny. And so some of that's good, and some of it's bad. As far as ethics is concerned, I would also like to point something out. You know, we've had a case where somebody had some tattoos, and there have been some boosters on sidelines, and there's been some agents and so on. But in the 60s and 70s and in the 80s, it was genuinely the wild, wild west. It wasn't tattoos, it was cars, and it was clothes, and it was cash. And what led to the demise of the Southwest Conference was essentially that. You know, the report on A&M was 2,000 pages long. And then TCU and SMU with a sudden death penalty, where the chairman of their Board of Regents, former Texas governor, was one of the guys that was involved in paying the players. And so today, after that SMU situation, the sudden death penalty, I think things changed rather radically. And there's still maybe a few things, but it isn't anywhere near like it once was. And so I think as far as ethics and honesty, tremendous changes. Two or three other things that I'll mention, and we'll start with the interview. Facilities certainly have changed, and everyone is in somewhat of an arms race, and I guess from the player's perspective, that's good. But you know, you've got practice facilities, you've got weight rooms, you've got natatoriums, you've got all kinds of facilities that are really excellent. And some schools have really gone deeply into debt in order to do that. We've done a lot of building in Nebraska, but we haven't borrowed a dime to do so. And we've been very fortunate in that respect. As far as the money is concerned, I think that the professional athletics has impinged somewhat on intercollegiate athletics and high school athletics and even youth leagues, because you now find a lot of kids that are playing Little League baseball or midget football or some type of youth basketball team whose parents have decided that their son needs to be highlighted and spotlighted in a certain way. So they will first of all get a college scholarship, and then secondly they'll go on to the NBA or the NFL or Major League Baseball. And so that whole thing has certainly escalated as the money has changed. And so the role of the high school coach and the Little League coach is probably more intense and more difficult than it once was. And to some degree the college coach as well, because you have agents and people kind of hanging around. It makes it a little bit harder. And then of course the salaries. I started out, I don't mind telling you, 1973 as a head coach at Nebraska. My salary was $25,000 a year. And Bob Devaney, who was before me, was probably more like 15 or 20. And today, most anybody in a major football conference is making somewhere between $2 to $5 million a year. So that has changed astronomically. Most coordinators are between $500,000 and $1 million. In the Big 12 conference, we had 3 women's basketball coaches who were making over $1 million a year. So the salaries have escalated exponentially. And I think that that's something that's at some point getting a little bit uncomfortable when university presidents maybe make 1/10, 1/15 of what the football coach makes. And I'm not sure that's quite in balance. As you know, the playoff, the 4-game playoff that they're going to have in 2014 will roughly double the amount of money that's brought into the bowl system. Right now it's about $200 million a year, and that's going to go to $400 million a year with those playoff games, and then the national championship game on top of it. So in the Big Ten Conference, for instance, with the Rose Bowl added in and the playoff, the Big Ten's cut will be around $100 million a year. So it's going to be $8 or $9 million per school per year just because of football. And so one of the major drivers of all of the conference realignment has been the BCS. Because if you're in a BCS bowl, you either make $17 or $18 million per participant per year. And if you have an automatic qualifier in a BCS bowl, which most of the major conferences have, including at one time the Big East, it caused a lot of people to jockey and try to get aligned in one of those conferences to participate in that money. And so the thing that I'm suggesting to you is that the money is probably important, but on the other hand, it has certainly changed the landscape. And I'm not sure it's all for the better. And again, you got to bear in mind that I'm an old person. I'm 76 now. And old people always think that things are going to heck with the younger generation. And so take my advice with a grain of salt. But it seems like, you know, when I go to a Big Ten meeting or the old Big 12 meetings, sometimes you swear you're at a bank board meeting or some kind of a business meeting, because that's most of the discussion, rather than the welfare of the game or the welfare of the players. And so herein lies the issue, the problem, and that is that the players are left behind so badly. In 1962, The value of a full scholarship was room, board, books, tuition, fees, and $15 a month for laundry, in quotes. And that $15 a month today, in today's dollars, would be about $80 a month. And they could get travel jackets, and if somebody wanted a movie theater, wanted to give them free movie passes, they could have them. And today, there's no $15 a month, there's no $80 a month, there's no travel jackets, and a lot of kids don't have a sport coat or a suit to wear on a trip. And so the players are at best no better off than they were in 1962, and probably much worse off proportionally. And yet athletic budgets and coaches' salaries and so on have increased exponentially by at least 100-fold. And so the landscape is a little bit ruffled right now, because you have the O'Bannon case where former basketball player at UCLA is suing, saying that he should have had rights to his likeness, to his image, his pictures, and so on, while he was an undergraduate and since. And then you have some guys who are suing some of the video games because their likeness has been used as intercollegiate players in video games. And it looks to me right now as though the NCAA is in a precarious position. And so if that thing goes down, like it may, and the starting quarterback at Arkansas, or Johnny Manziel, it doesn't matter if signing an autograph or two, but if he has the rights to his likeness and his name on a jersey, and all those sales that are being propelled by that, it will certainly drastically alter the way things are done. And so who knows where that's going to go. But it's an uneasy situation. Let me mention two more things. One is that even though there's a lot of revenue, currently costs are outstripping revenues for the average Division I team. I think costs are going up about 9–10%, and revenues are going up 6 or 7%. As you know, as business people, that doesn't fly very long. And right now there are about 20 schools that are solvent, that are in the black as far as the major football playing schools. And most other schools rely on institutional support. So that is a little bit troubling as well. The other thing that concerns me is that we're seeing kids coming into our programs who are from less stable circumstances than they once were. When I first went out and recruited back in the 60s, kind of rare to see someone from a single-parent family. And today, 50% of our young people are growing up without both biological parents. An awful lot of them do not have a father in their life, do not have a father figure. So as a result, sometimes the most important, most influential person in that young man's life is a coach. And sometimes people say, well, athletics builds character. I'm not sure that's true. I think athletics reveals character, and it's kind of like money. It's neutral. It can be used for great good. It can also be used very negatively. And so the influence of that coach can be either very good, very positive, or very negative. And but I think it's important to realize how important those youth coaches are, and how important those high school coaches are, and to some degree college coaches. In college coaches, there's a lot less patience with a college coach because he's making $2, $3 million, $4 million a year. And as a result, instead of maybe giving them 3 or 4 or 5 years, it's now 2 or maybe even 1. And so it's a difficult situation. And lastly, I'll just say this. The NCAA is in a tight spot because it's a governing body that's trying to write the rules for a wide spectrum of schools. You've got Division III schools, 250 of them or so, who give no scholarships, who have very small budgets. And then Division II, which has some scholarships, but not a whole lot. And then in Division I, you have the FBS schools that play football, and their budgets, for the most part, are $70 to $150 million. Then you have 100 schools that just play basketball in Division I, and their budgets are much smaller. And so how do you write a rule book that covers all of those rules? And so often what happens is the lowest common denominator writes the rule, i.e. you can have only 2 colors of ink on recruiting stationery. Now you tell that to Nick Saban, you only have 2 colors of ink on your stationery, he would roll his eyeballs, and all of us would. But there's some schools that simply can't afford it. And certainly that $2,000 stipend for athletes makes a lot of sense to the bigger schools. When you look at salaries and everything else, that's simply cost of attendance. Academic scholarships, a lot of them have cost of attendance because it costs more to go to school than room, board, books, tuition, and fees. And yet for some schools that are really strapped financially, you can't do that. And so the thing that's probably going to happen, one, either the NCAA is going to have a separate division for the FBS schools, the football playing major conferences, or they're going to split. And I don't know which. And please don't come out here and quote me and say that everybody's going to leave the NCAA. I'm just saying it's uncomfortable right now, and I think something will happen one way or the other. And so on that happy note, I will shut up. So why don't we go ahead and we'll do whatever you want.
Why don't you just sit right there?
Okay, you want me to sit?
No, you're fine. No, just stand right
Okay,
there.
I'll stay here.
Okay.
Now you're gonna get to the real stuff.
Check. What we'll do, since we just have a few minutes, I'm going to ask Coach a few questions, and then we'll open it up to the floor. Coach, you were a grad assistant in the '64 Cotton Bowl, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
What is your memory? Obviously, we have a lot of respect for Coach Brules in that era. What is your memory of Coach Brules for that game and the Arkansas program in the '60s?
Well, it was I went down and scouted him as a GA down in Lubbock. I remember they were playing over there, and I got to know Frank, and he and I have been good friends. And so I've had a lot of respect for Frank over the years. He called me up one time and talked to me about coming down here to coach. And thought maybe I better stay at Nebraska. But we've been good friends ever since. And certainly he was a very innovative guy. I remember one thing that we put in something called the monster defense. And most everybody was playing an even front, and he was playing an odd front. And the monster was the strong safety. And you put that guy out at the strength of the formation, and then usually played some kind of 3 deep behind it. And quite often you slanted away from the monster, and then it went to an eagle defense. But he was the guy that really started that, as far as I know. So a pretty innovative guy, very smart guy, and I thought did a great job for Arkansas.
A lot of pressure. A lot of pressure being a head coach in college today with all the money.
Mm-hmm.
Back when you replaced a legend, was there pressure there? You didn't have quite the television coverage that you do now, 24/7. What was it like during that transition replacing
Well,
Manning?
there wasn't much pressure on me except for that doggone Keith Jackson. Oklahoma beat us 5 straight times. And it was getting down to where the folks were really restless. And I took over from Bob at age 35. And I didn't have Keith Jackson. And I remember he ran a reverse on us for about 70 yards one time. And so we lost 5 times. And it got down to a 1-game season. You know, we could be 10-0. If we lost to Oklahoma, it was a bad year. And so maybe you've been there before. I don't know if you have or not. But we finally did beat Oklahoma. And they had Billy Sims. And we were kind of fortunate to win. And then we won a few more. And then we won some toward the end. But Oklahoma was always tough. And Switzer and I are good friends. You know, I know he's an Arkansas guy, and we still socialize a little bit together. And he's a good guy.
25 years of coaching. I'm surprised, Jim, you didn't include this. 25 years of coaching. I think I saw a stat today that your teams were only out of the AP poll 3 weeks in 25 years. And I remember when I played, you know, some folks from the media would say, well, Coach Osborne hasn't won the big one. And that was always around, and you had the great game against Miami. Was that something that you dealt with? Is that something you put on the shelf, or in all those years when you were winning, but just not winning national championships?
Well, all you can do is do your best. And you know, there was a guy named John Wooden that was pretty important to me. John was a basketball coach out at UCLA, and early in my coaching career, I read one of his books, and in that book he said, you know, he never mentioned the word winning to his players. I thought, well, this is odd. You know, this guy won 89 straight basketball games, home and away, won 10 out of 12 national championships. But what he did is he always talked about the process. You know, he said the important thing was what you did on Monday, and the first thing he did with these players, he showed them how to put their socks on, so they wouldn't get blisters, and how to dribble and how to bend their knees. And so we focus really heavily on the process. And it wasn't just fundamentals, it was also how to live your life and so on. And I always felt that if we played up to our capabilities, if we played as well as we could play, or came pretty close to it, there's always that perfect game out there, you know, which you never quite get. It's like a perfect golf game. You never have a perfect game. But if you come pretty close, you know, if you realize your potential, then you are successful. And so I walked off the field 2 or 3 national championship games. We lost, but we played really well. And we played well enough to have won the game. We played at the level, at the very top level. And so the fans would be agonizing and gnashing their teeth. But I always felt that, you know, you win some, you lose some. But if you do the right things often enough, sooner or later it's going to happen. And so, yeah, I lived with that for quite a while. But
put that to rest.
It's part of the deal.
Put that to rest at the end with 3 national championships.
Yeah.
Coach, obviously in the Big Ten now, been in the Big 12. Do you get sick of all the SEC talk? And why do you think the SEC has done so well the last 7 years?
Well, the SEC has done things a little better than the Big Ten in many respects. First of all, the Big Ten has a lot of programs. You know, Michigan, Ohio State have more than 30 sports. We have 23, and I think the average in the Big Ten is 23 to 25. And in the SEC, they concentrate more on fewer sports, so they put 16, 17 sports is about where it is, put a lot of emphasis on it. And Big Ten has some rules on oversigning that are pretty stringent, and they've had them for a long time. And I proposed to the Big Ten, I said, look, let's just abide by NCAA rules. Why put extra rules on us? And of course, as you know, Sun Belt population, weather shifts, there's a lot of population moving this way, and they're moving out of states like Michigan and places like that. But overall, the Big Ten has got to pick it up, and we have a competitive league. But I have great admiration. I've been down and talked at Nick Saban's high school clinic, and this guy works awfully hard at recruiting. I mean, this guy's unbelievable. And he told me one time, he said, you know, the NFL was a mistake. Because in the NFL, you're pretty much at the mercy of your scouts and your front office as to who you're playing with. But in college football, you can control a lot of who your players are simply by being really well organized and working really hard. And so he's got things going down there pretty good.
Last question, and we'll open it up to the floor.
Okay.
Obviously, you're familiar with our new head coach, Coach Bielema. I believe Nebraska played him twice and was on the bad side of the loss. What are your thoughts on Coach Bielema and what you saw him do at Wisconsin?
Well, he had, you know, 3 straight Big Ten championships, which is very good, and obviously ran the ball well. And so, you know, Nick Saban is a little bit like Brett in that Nick believes in a very strong running game, a lot of I formation, tight end in the ball game. And out of the Big 12, you know, we were playing with the spread offenses and 5 wide receivers and all that kind of stuff. And so the Big Ten's a little different style. And I think in the Southeast Conference, you've got a variety. You've got some spread offenses, you've got some I formation, and so he'll fit in well. But it'll take him a little while, I think, to get his system in place, because he's going to really emphasize offensive line. He's going to have a fullback that can block. He's going to have a tight end in there, and they're going to ram it at you. But then they're going to run play action pass. And believe me, when he had Russell Wilson, they were something, you know. And Russell, I don't know how North Carolina State ever let that guy get away, but he's one of the finest quarterbacks we've ever seen. Now he's in the NFL, 5'11", and he's beating everybody. So.
All right, we'll open up the floor for just a few minutes. Point out whoever you want.
Yes, sir. Guy from Texas, the hook 'em horn guy. I spotted you.
I truly believe that you're one of the greatest coaches of all time.
That's what I
And
thought.
you look
Yeah.
if you look up honesty and integrity in the dictionary, it has your picture.
Well,
If
thank you.
Johnny Manziel was your quarterback, would he still be playing today?
If Johnny Manziel was Coach Osborne's quarterback, would he still be playing today?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's so hard from the outside to judge because I don't know what went on in the meeting rooms. I don't know what Johnny's like. I met Johnny back at the Walter Camp Awards, and he was kind of bored. He had him sitting around there for 2 days, you know, and he seemed like a nice young guy. So depends on what the coach told him. You know, if the coach said don't do certain things, and he did them, then I suppose he wouldn't play. But Johnny has been, he's been the source of a tremendous amount of attention. You know, this guy was maybe number 3 on the depth chart a little bit more than a year ago, and all of a sudden he wins the Heisman Trophy, and he's got all this attention. And he hasn't had much time to adjust. Most guys are going to be a starter for a couple of years in a major program before they ever win the Heisman Trophy. But
Do you think the Heisman did that to him?
What's that?
Do you believe that the Heisman shouldn't have
Well,
been given to him because of that?
I don't know about that. I couldn't tell you. He certainly played well on the field, you know. He's a great player, and I really hope things settle down for him. But I'll tell you, you know, none of us in this room, including myself, probably have had the scrutiny that Johnny's had, whether it be something he tweets or whether he signs an autograph or doesn't sign an autograph, you know. And the guy's in a fishbowl, and I think he's not very comfortable with it, is my impression, that he just doesn't quite know how to handle it all. And hopefully he'll grow into the position and the job, but I feel kind of sorry for him in a way.
Not if he keeps going to Texas football parties.
Speaking of Johnny,
Yeah. Yes, sir.
2 quick questions. One, can you tell about the time Lou Holtz visited you when he was a coach at Arkansas?
Yeah.
You had an interesting comment in something I read about fans' self-esteem being tied to their football programs. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I can. Well, yeah, Lou, it was interesting because I don't remember what year it was, but he called, and this was during the season. And he had an open date, and he said, I want to come up and visit you. And I'd had coaches come up, you know, in the off season or in the summer, but never during the season. And he came up, and he spent a couple of days with us, and he sat in on our meetings, and he watched practice. And before he left, he said, you know, the one thing that jumped out at me about this place was how positive your coaches were. He said, I've never seen that before. And I said, well, that's maybe a little bit by design, because I did go to graduate school, and the one thing that we figured out was that if you want to change behavior, the best way to change behavior is to catch somebody doing something right and to praise it and reward it, rather than continually be on somebody's back, you know. And so often we equate coaching with criticism, and that's all you do. And then pretty soon kids begin to tune you out. So, yeah, we had a good visit. I do have respect for Lou, and we've been good friends for a long time. As far as the fans identifying with the team, we have that in Nebraska, and I think you have it in Arkansas too. You know, if Nebraska loses a game or doesn't play well, you know, first game we probably didn't play it up to our capabilities, and everybody's depressed. I mean, the whole state's depressed. And if you lose and you're the head coach and you go home, you better take the phone off the hook and you draw the shades and pretend you're not home. And but that's just the way it is. And the good side of that is people care, you know. I'd rather have people be passionate and care about it than to be apathetic. And so when people care, unfortunately, they identify with you so strongly that the way they feel has to do sometimes with how that football team performs or other teams.
Coach, let's go ahead and wrap it up so we can make sure you get back to.
Okay? Enough?
That's it, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay.
Tom Osborne, everybody. Great job, Coach. Thank you so much. Get the yard line members, come on up and get your picture taken. Remember, let's make sure and be efficient with our time with Coach Osborne so we can get him to the airport. Now, Coach, you can just stay right up here.